Okay, what time? We are back in Sanhedrin. We're on Kuf Yud Bet. Amud Aleph. We're at the start of the wider lines. There's widest, and then the one's a little bit wider, right before the widest. So over there, Amud Rav Chisda. The English were on 112 A4. 112 A4. And we're middle of a sugya of the Ir Hanidachat, right? So the city, the wayward city, who the majority of the city did Avodah Zarah. People convinced them to do it. We went through a lot of the particulars, and we saw that part of the dinim was that the people who did the Avodah Zarah, the Rishonim, they're going to be judged. They're going to get killed with the sword, versus usually someone who does Avodah Zarah gets skila. Usually he gets skila, and his money goes to his yarshin. They go to his inheritors. But in the case of Erni Dachat, the Rishonim get the sword, and their money gets burnt. And not only their money gets burnt, but even the tzaddikim who lived amongst them, their property also gets burnt. So now, another case that the Gemara is now going to ask is based on Rav Chisda. And Amar Rav Chisda, Behema chetzel she'er nidachat, v'chetzel she'er acheret. So the er nidachat, there was a guy who lived there, and a guy who lived in another city, and they both owned together, jointly owned a animal. So now only half of the animal becomes usher. Can I eat the other half, or can I have hana? Can I have benefit from the other half? So Rav Chisda says asura. It becomes completely forbidden. No part of it can be eaten. No part of it can get benefit from, depending on which Rishayim you learn with. But basically, the whole animal becomes usher. Okay, we have to give it an explanation, but let's see the next part. The next statement. Isa. So a doe, chetzia shel nidachat, that belongs half to ir nidachat. Vechetzia shel acheret, and belongs half to another city. Again, two people own this piece of dough. Okay, it's a big dough, let's say. So Rav Chisda says muteret. It's going to be mutter. My tama. What is the reason? What is the reason by an animal we say it can't be divided, whereas by a dough we say it could be divided, and the part that wasn't belonging to Eri Dachat becomes moter. Behema command like pligadama, Isa command the fligadamia. So the Gemara said we treat an animal as if it's not divided. We have to look at it as a whole. Whereas a dough could be divided, and therefore the half that's mutar remains mutar. Whereas by the animal, you cannot look at it as half, and therefore it's considered one whole thing. And since it's usher on the half, the whole thing becomes usher. So there's three approaches to this, at least three approaches that are brought down in the Rishonim, the Farshim. So we have here really the Rashi and the Chidusha Haran. They both pretty much want to say that in order to eat the animal, you have to shecht it. And to shecht an animal, you need to cut its two pipes, right? The two simanim. But whereas when you split the animal in half, right, half the animal includes one of the pipes. If it's two pipes, right, half belong to him, half belong to him. So one of the pipes is unable to do shechita on him because it's asur. So since you cannot shecht it properly, it's not going to be roi le'achila. Okay, that's the way Rashi looks like the Chidusha Haran wants to learn from this. The Chidusha Haran has a question on Rashi. We'll see it in the next section. But another chiluk, Rayad Ramah says, "I'll tell you why you can't split an animal. Because let's say, okay, me and you have an animal, and I said, listen, I want out of this partnership. Give me my half." And you say, okay, I'll pay you. I said, no, I don't want to pay. I want my half of the animal. Split it in half. Can it be done? No, it cannot be done. Cannot split an animal in half. An animal, to be about l'chaim, to be alive, has to be in full. Okay, a dough, on the other hand, if I say, give me my half today, you can give me my half today. So it's possible to be split. So since an animal cannot be possibly split between the two shutzvim, it's considered one. And when it comes usher, even on the half, it comes usher on the whole. Whereas the isa, the dough, it could be split. even today. So therefore, the Isser only goes to its half and not the other half. The Rishash wants to use the halachic principle of Brera, which is to say, when I split it today, right? When I split it today, means that 3 days ago, that's really was split. Okay. And so by the dough, when I split it today, right, that's where it was split beforehand. But he says you cannot say that by an animal because the whole animal is attached to one another, meaning each part of the animal, you need the other part in order for it to live. So therefore, there's no way to say, oh, I split it today, and 3 days ago that's where it really was split. Also, you can't say that. Can't do the lachmas and breder because it needs all of it needs each other to be alive, and therefore it will be aser bein la'achila or bein lahanom according to the Mishash and to the Ramah. It would be completely aser. So that's 3 ways to understand the difference between a dough and a animal. So either it's the issue of shchita, and shchita can't happen on half an animal, Rashi Ran. You have the Ramah that says I cannot split it today if I wanted to split it. There's no way to split it, right? Whereas the dough could be split. And the Rashash that says, yeah, there's a halachic principle of Brera. When I do today, it could be understood that it happened before. That can happen by a dough. But by a animal, it's impossible because every part of it needs to be with it in order for it to be alive. So similar to the Rishash and the Ramah seem to be somewhat similar, but one using halachic principle of Brera, one using the halachic principle of can I split it today? Okay, so continues now the Gemara. The Gemara says another case. Vayirav Chizda. Behema iranidachat mahu ditahane boshchita letara midei nevela. Can shchita help to be retired from nevela? Okay, the question is as follows. Now, we usually look at shchita as a point to make the animal kosher to eat. But there's another thing that shchita does, and this is also found, by the way, in this week's parsha that we read, Parsha Shmini, we read Parsha Shabbos, is that when an animal dies, all right, let's talk about big animals. Animals die, they give tumah. They're mitame. Person can come tumah from touching a dead animal. Whether it be a bear, a lion, whatever it is. A sheep, a cow. The only time a sheep, a cow, and the other kosher animals are not mitame when they're dead is when they had shechita. So even if I did shechita, and then I realized the animal's not kosher, it has a terifa, something inside of it's not kosher, but it's a kosher animal, so to speak, is one of the kosher animals, and I did shechita on it, that carcass now does not give tumah. It's not mitame because I had a proper shechita. Even though it's not kosher to eat, it's not mitame because it was a proper shechita. So the Gemara's question now is, the question is, here I have this animal. You're telling me I can't. He's er and I can't eat him, right? I have to kill him. Now, what happens if I shecht him? I can't eat it. You're right. But is he now mitame? Does he give tumah this animal or not? So basically, does shechita work to take away the tumah by an ir hanidachat animal that's a kosher animal? So the Gemara's two sides are as follows: 112a5 in the art scroll. Amar Rachmana lefi charev, right? Lefi charev Amar Rachmana. It says in the Torah, kill him by the sword. Doesn't make a difference if you shecht him or if you kill him with the sword. It's considered that you killed him, right? And la shchita, it's not going to be shchita. Or do we say no? You're right. There's a sword and there's a shchita, and since you didn't kill him with the sword, you kill him with the shaychet knife. It's considered shchita, and he's not going to be. It's not going to be mitame. So which way does it go? So again, the point is as follows: we want to take away the tumah of this Eranidachas animal by killing him with a shoichet knife and doing a proper shechita, even though it won't work for achila. So one side says, listen, you have to kill him, right? You have to execute him. This is the way you executed him with the shoichet knife. So you execute him, he remains usher. The other one, no, I shechted him. Yeah, I killed him, but I shechted him. Therefore, maybe the tumah should go away. So the Gemara says, "Teiku tishbi started." Put your voice. We don't have an answer at this point. Okay. Now we come. Okay, so before we move on, just I want to mention the Chidush Haran. Remember, I told you before. Rashi said that the whole case of the half of the cow belonging to Ir Nidachar, that's all about shechita, about shechting it, right? And since you can't shecht one of the simanim, so it'll be asur. So then Rashi has a line. Va'afilu shachta mishachay ein b'shchita saklum. The word shchita kaima el lemisa. V'shchita sazo hi mitas behema. So Rashi says when you shech the animal, it's not considered shchita. It's considered you're killing him. And Rashi says on the case before. So then what is Rav Chiz's question over here? If I do shchita, is it considered shchita? Is it considered killing? Rashi already understood the case that shchita on a dead animal would not be considered shchita. So the Ran wants to say that perhaps Rashi is being mechalik between achila and between tumah v'tahara. So perhaps when Rashi said the shchita doesn't work for a shchita, talking about for achila, to eat it, it won't work. Shchita won't work. But perhaps Rav Chiz's question is not on the achila part, but like Rav Chiz says, the tumah v'tahara. You're right. Shchita doesn't work for achila. But does shchita work for tumah v'tahara? And that's his question. So when Rashi said the shchita doesn't do anything, he's talking about shchita for achila and not shchita for tumah v'tahara. Okay, next question. Of the Gemara. The Gemara's question is: Boy Rav Yosef Se'ar Noshim Titkani Mahu. What's the story about the hair of the righteous woman? What's the Havamina? What is the first understanding of this question? The first understanding of this question is as follows. The initial understanding is that we said all the property of the Er Nidachar has to get burned. Here, this woman is walking around with hair on her head, and this hair is an asset. It is a value. It has money because you can cut off the hair and you can make a wig. You can sell it. You can use the hair for other things, whatever it is. So, do I have to take it off her? So to speak, cut it off her and burn it? That's the question. So, Amarava, are you telling me that by the Sha'im you definitely have to cut it off and burn it? And that's why you're asking the question by the righteous woman? But what does it say in the Torah? Tikbot v'sarafta kitiv. It says gather it and burn it. Mishe'enu mechusar el kivitza usrefa. Yatza zeh shemechusar telisha ukvitza usrefa. The Gemara says, listen, the pasuk says you gather it and you burn it. It doesn't say about cutting it, gathering and burning it. So it must be only stuff that can be gathered and burned. That's the ones that are what's it called that have to get burnt, but not the ones that have to get cut and burnt. So what's the question? The case was not about the hair that they're actually on their bodies, but rather about a wig. So now to read the question again would be the wigs of the Nashim Tzidkaniyot Mahu, the wigs that the righteous woman would wear. What is the din of that wig in the city of Ir Hanidachai? So there are some here that want to see. Here is the Gemara. The Gemara is saying Noshim Tzidkaniyot, and it's talking about a feya nochrit, talking about a wig, and they have proof here from the times of the Talmud that a woman, Tzidkaniyot woman, righteous woman, would wear wigs. So it's a proof that there was a Talmudical already in the times of the Talmud that wigs was a way of covering the hair of the Nashim Tzidkaniyot. Probably there are those who would learn the Gemara saying who says there's a married woman, who says that the wig is what we understand the wig today. I'm sure there's many different studies to it, but pashtas, in simplicity, reading the Gemara, it seems Nashim Tzidkaniyos. And what does that mean? That they wore wigs. Okay, anyway, going away from the wig issue for a moment. Hey, Chidami, go back to the Gemara. So the Gemara says, what's the case? What's the case of the wig? If it's connected to her body, then then it's like her body. And we're not burning the Nashim Tzidkaniyos, only the Rashayim get killed by the sword, and the property gets burnt. but we're not killing the person. So if it's attached to her head, okay, go for that. What does it mean attached to her head? So Rashi says she's wearing it. The other ma sees attached mean that it's attached via wax or via some substance, some glued or something like that. That's really really attached. So the Gemara now says, like tzricha the tala besifta. The question is relevant in a case where it was hanging on a peg. So Rashi understands. It's at home. She's not wearing it. It's on the mannequin. The Yad Ramah understands it that not that she's not wearing it. She's wearing it, but she's wearing it in a fashion where it's not glued to the head. It's loosely attached, fastening or something like that. So it's not attached to the head. So what do we say? Do we say that that it's like property because it's not glued to her head, so it's not her body, and therefore it should be burned. Or do we say that since she's always wearing it, it's on her, and it's on and off her all the time, so it's like her clothing, and as such, since it's her clothing, we don't take off the person's clothing and say, you're from Aaron Nidachas, that clothing worth money. Throw it into the fire. You walk around without clothing. We don't do that, right? So since it's possible to say that her wig is considered like a clothing, and therefore we don't have to burn it, and the Gemara leaves this question at a teku. Okay, Tishbi, Taretz Kushas. Fine. The next case in the Gemara. But it calls it says you take all the booty, all the assets, all the valuables, and you bring them to the city square. Okay, into the square, to the Rechovah. Now, the question really is, Tanu Avanan, En la Rehov. What happens if you don't have a square? Right? The pasuk says you take it to the square and you burn it. I don't have a square in the city. So what happens? So Enana said, Irani Hadaha. Rabbi Shmuel says, it does not become an Irani Dacha. The fact that it doesn't have a city square doesn't become Irani Dacha. Kiva says, Ein la rehov osin la rehov. You don't have a square, you make a square now. What do you make a big deal? You make a square now. The Maikim Aflidi. What are they arguing? My sover rechov me ikarad mashma. My sover. Rishmal. When it says rechov in the pasuk, it means it was there from before. Okay, physically there from before. My sover rechov hashanami mashma. Now it also means rechov. That's the way Rashi learns. The Chushan saying that was it a functioning square? Okay, was it a functioning square? Right? Was it a functioning square from the beginning, Rabbi Shmuel, or not? Rabbi Kiva says, I don't care functioning or not. The fact is a rechayva, it's a rechayva. Or do you say there is no rechayva and now you make a rechayva? So two ways to understand that Gemara. The Rabbi Kiva would be of the opinion that you would make the city square and you would burn the assets. Okay. Now we're going to come to our last Gemara for today, but it's going to require a little bit of a understanding. So we're going to try to do it in the most in a way that's mostly, I think, developed to understand it well. So let's start with this Gemara. Let's do the first part and then we get into it. Tanu Rabbanan. Hayu ba kodashim. If in Aaron Dacha there were kodashim or koche kodashim, like the Gemara says, koche mizbeach yamutu. If it belonged to the Mizbeach, the guy says, I'm going to bring a Korban, so then you have to let it die. The animal has to die. Okay? So, basically, let's just understand what's happening here. You have here the Irani Dachat. You have a guy who's going to be killed, and his property has to be destroyed through the Rasha. But meanwhile, before he was killed, he said, I'm going to give this Korban to Hashem. So now the question is, what do I do with this Korban on Hashem? It doesn't belong to the guy anymore, because he said, I'm going to give it to Hashem. But at the same point, you don't really want to bring it up on the Mizbeach because it's disgusting to take an animal from an Irani Dachat and serve it to Hashem. The Gemara's Eitzah is, Yamutu, let him die. Just let the animal die. What do? They will bring him into a small enclosure, not give him any food, or give him some food that'll blow up his stomach. And they kofinoto, they let the animal die. That's if it's koche Mizbeach. Koche bedekabayit ifadu. If it is kosher b'dekabayit, meaning it was given for the upkeeping of the mikdash, not the actual animal has to go on the mizbeach, but rather the money will be used in the construction of the mikdash and the upkeep of the mikdash. So in such a case, you would redeem the animal, right, and use the money to for the temple. Utrumat irkuvu, and if it's truma, you let it rot. Ma'aser sheni v'chitzei kodesh yignozu. And if it's ma'aser sheni or svarim, you would put it in tigeniza, you would bury it. Shimon Omer, Shimon says, I learned a little different. It says its animals and not animals that belong to Bechor Maaser. Shilala, its property, and excluding Kesef Hegdish, silver the Hegdish and Kesef of Maaser. Okay, that was the Braita. Now we're going to analyze the Braita. The first question, Amaman. It said, Hayuba Koche Kodashim, Koche Mizbeach Yamutu. Let it die. The Gemara's question is, Va'ama Yamutu. Why let it die? Do as follows. Let it get a mum, let it get a blemish, let it walk around and get blemished. And then you sell it. And that money that you sell, and then you'll be able to use that money to buy another sacrifice. Right? So why are we letting it die? We can have it, get a mum, and then say, it can't go up on the mikdash, sell it, make the money, and use that money. So Yochanan says, no. There's a pasuk. The pasuk says, Zevach Nishayim To'iva. Pasuk is in Mishlei. And it's basically saying the sacrifice of a Rasha is a To'iva. So therefore, I don't care if you are redeeming it on the money or something else. It is considered an abomination. And therefore, I don't want to see it. Now, interesting. Hold on. How do you understand this? So the Me'iri says, okay, Zevach Rashayim To'iva. So you know whose animals you're not allowed to bring up, or you're not allowed to get the mum or anything like that. That is the animals of the Rashayim, the guys who actually served Avodah Zarah in the Irani Dachad. Their animals have to be allowed to be killed. But what about the Tzadikim? It doesn't say Zevach Tzadikim To'iva. It says Zevach Rashayim. They're not Rashayim, they're Tzadikim. So therefore, it says the Me'iri, in the case of a tzaddik who had an animal, right, and he lived in the area of Nachas, he says animals in the mikdash, and he never served with the Zara, so his property had to get destroyed. What about an animal that he already says for the mikdash? Well, guess what? Says Miri, that animal goes on the mizbeach. It's only the animals of the Rishaim that we're talking about here. However, there are those who are chaylik on the Miri, and those who say that, hold on, he's a tzaddik. But why does his property need to be destroyed? Why does his property need to be destroyed? Because he did an Avera by still living there with them, right? So therefore, in the meantime, between his property being destroyed and from when the Sid became Dachat, he's not a Tzaddik Gombre. He's not a Tzaddik Gombre. And therefore, it cannot be brought up. And also, a Tzaddik's Karban, they say, Hashem, has to also be allowed to be killed because he wasn't a Tzaddik the entire time, and he needed that kapara, and therefore the animal has to be allowed to die. So you have here the Me'iri and those who argue with the Me'iri of how do you see the Tzaddikim's korbanot. So Me'iri again doesn't say Zevach Tzaddikim, To'iva says Zevach Rashayim. They're not Rashayim. And the others just say they are Tzaddikim, but not complete Tzaddikim because they need a kapara, therefore the animals have to be left to be killed. Okay, so that is the Me'iri, and those are Chalik the Me'iri on Zevach Rashayim To'iva. Now we come to the other thing. Reish Lakish, I'll tell you why you cannot do the redemption. Because Mamon Ba'alim Hu. Because these animals are the responsibility of the owner. It's not just that this is going to be a Karban LaHashem. They have a financial responsibility to it. We're talking about Koche Kochim, right? Rabbi Shimon here. Rabbi Shimon, who says that the money, the Kochim that you're saying is to Hashem is actually the person's financial responsibility, and therefore it's Zevach Rashayim To'iva. right? It's not Zevach Shemim Toiva, but rather it belongs to the evil person, and as such, he needs to die, right? And his property needs to be burned, and so therefore it cannot be brought up. Okay, the Amar Mamon Ba'alimu. So the Gemara says, "Who is this Rabbi Shimon?" Right? The Gemara says, "1 second. I'm the same Rabbi Shimon. You cannot say this is Rabbi Shimon because the original Brayta that we learned said Rabbi Shimon learned Behem Tal Shalalah. So he's at the end of the Brayta. So how could you say how to say Rabbi Shimon? Reisha La Rabbi Shimon. It cannot be Reisha at the beginning of Rabbi Shimon. So rather Kotche Kolim. What are we talking about? Kotche Kolim, right? So Kotche Kolim. Those are certain animals like the Pesach, the mice, and the Bechor. These are Kosher Kalim. And we're dealing with those. We say that Kosher Kalim belong to the responsibility of the one who designated it. So even if they get damaged, it's going to still be their responsibility. And therefore, it's the moment of the person in the ear and it has to get burned. Okay? So, by the way, if you learn it this way, according to Reish Lakish, would it make a difference if it's the money of a tzaddik or if it's the money of a rasha? Meaning, like Meiri said, so only the Rishayim, not the tzaddikim. You can bring theirs up. What about according to Reish Lakish? Reish Lakish, who said it has to do with the financial responsibility of the owner. It says according to the shitas of the Reish Lakish, it wouldn't make a difference in tzaddik the rasha, because what? The money of the tzaddik also has to get destroyed, right? And if you're saying this is the money, right? This is the money responsibility, then it doesn't make a difference. The tzaddik rasha would not be brought onto the mizbeach. So the Aruch Chaner in the shitas of the Reish Lakish. Okay, now the Gemara continues. The Gemara says, "Aval kachem kachem my ipadu." Would they be redeemed? At the time, Seifa kachem b'dekabai ipadu. Because if you look in the way we read the Braita, it says Koche Bedekabayit Yipadu. It doesn't say Koche Kalim. So the ones you donate for the upkeep of the Mikdash, not these karbanos. So Liflag will listen bidida. You should have if the difference is Koche Kochim, Koche Kalim, it should make that. But Medavar Amurim. The Koche Kalim. The Koche Kochim Yipadu. Say it that way. Okay? Why didn't we say it that way? Why did it go from Koche Kalim to Koche Bedekabayit? Koche Kochim, Koche Kalim. Koche Kalim is a financial responsibility. Koche Kochim, you could be part of. Why didn't we say it that way? Mara says you couldn't say it that way. Kivin the Iko Chatas, Metu Ba'aleya, the Milsa Ozla, Loib Sikol. Because you cannot say that Koche Kochim, you could be a part of, you can redeem it. You can't. Because one of the Koche Kochim is a Hatat. And a hatat cannot be redeemed. If the owner dies, that's it. It cannot be redeemed. So there was a case of a koche kochim that cannot be redeemed. So you couldn't say, koche kolim, to financial responsibility of the owner, so therefore you have to let it die. Koche kochim, you could redeem it. No, it's not true. Because chatas of a koche kochim cannot be redeemed if the owner dies. So therefore, it didn't say it that way. Rather, it set up the way we have it, right? Saying Kodshim is Beach Yametu and Kodshim Gwedakabayit Ipodu. That's why it set it up this way, because that's an absolute statement versus the other one. All right, one last, please, and we will finish up today's Gemara. First, we understand if Yochanan didn't say this Reish Lakish. He's not talking about Mammon. Why? Because he has a pasuk. Zevach Nashayim To'iva. Reish Lakish, my time, why didn't Reish Lakish use the pasuk? Why is he saying Mammon Balim, Mammon this, Mammon that? Just say like there, say like Rabbi Yochanan. Zavech Sha'im To'iva. So Amar Lav Hashem say to him, Ki Amim Zavech Sha'im To'iva. Hani Mili Hechad Itnahu Be'einayu. Avalacha Kiva Ishtane. So Reish Lakish can say, wait, there's a difference. There's a difference when the actual Zevach, the actual Karban belongs to the Rasha. Then I can understand why it's Zevach L'Shahim To'iva. But if it's the money and he gets another carbon, can you really say that that's Zevach L'Shahim To'iva? That is the carbon of the Rasha? No, it's got redeemed, it got bought again. There's a whole different change over here. There was a little change, and then perhaps that's why Reish Lakish would allow that. and not use the pasuk Zever L'Sharim. Okay, so that is the Gemara for this week. But Hashem, we don't have too much left, but let me just take a quick look. I think another 2 classes, and then we'll finish up the Sanhedrin. So next week and the week after. All right. Kol Tov, Shavuot Tov. Any questions?
Yeah, what's the next book we have in mind?
That's a very good question. You have any recommendations?
This was pretty good. This was very interesting. So
a lot of interesting stuff.
We cannot complain if we get something boring next time.
I'm thinking about it. I have 2 weeks to figure it out. If you have any recommendations, let me know.
Don't take any long ones.
Oh no, it shouldn't be a long one. Okay.
Psychologically, we'll be like, oh, we're done with one book at least.
I hear. We did 3 years on Masechet Sanhedrin almost. So we'll see. Okay, we'll be in touch.
Thank you. Hazak Baruch.
Shavuot Tov.